It's the old one. The link doesn't exist anymore. I just needed to get to the. Page.
We will have a conversation dialogue and one of us is going to be
Can you go back inside? Go back into this page. I closed your window real quick. Oh no.
This is a real life example of what you're teaching anyway. Often you're going to students not quite sure what to do. This is a real life example of what you're teaching anyway. Often you're going to students not quite sure what to do. This is a real life example of what you're teaching anyway. Often you're going to students not quite sure what to do.
We're watching good.
You're gonna have to let it go. Like,
I will, but it's while they're talking. I'm gonna screw with it.
But it is the right size. Like it's weird and everything.
No, it's not. See the dimensions. This.
You're gonna have to accept good enough.
Oh yeah, I will, but I will once we're not. That's the right size, maybe. Let's see. I think it's still cutting it off slightly. It's better. Yeah.
It's good enough. What is an appropriate prize in a class? Stickers.
That is a good question. Oh, I figured out why.
It's your computer.
I had one of your other. Yep, we're good. It should be gone.
This is awesome.
No, I had I had the YouTube page, your channel page up, and it was playing a sports festival day.
Okay, so there we go. We got it. All right. So thank you everyone for being patient with the technical issues. Yes, stickers are great. Candy is not. So I'm going to jump ahead. Okay. So I am the president of the JETAA Rocky Mountain Group. There are about 500 of us across New Mexico, Colorado, Utah, and Wyoming. So, and then there's like a more active core within that. We're based out of Denver because the consulate is here. So I am now the Japanese and Korean Studies librarian at the University of Colorado Boulder. So JET does turn into post-JET careers, although it was a very winding path to get there. And then the other thing as well is this is my 10th year having finished JET, so I'm officially a JET senpai. So it's my 10-year anniversary for the end of JET, and I'm still very fond of the JET program and very active in the Alumni Association. So welcome to the JET program. Congratulations. You are now part of a very exclusive club of people. There are 60,000 of us worldwide. They are everywhere. I do a lot of business trips through my work, and I always connect with the JET alumni community in Toronto, in England, in California, in New York. They're all over the place. I ran into a JET on Pearl Street in Boulder the other day. They were just there, and I was like, did you teach engineering? Were you on JET program? Ta-da. And we had like 13 friends in common, as it turned out. So it is a very small world. It's a great support network. We will be here for you afterward. So this is the board. They're all around you. Erin, unfortunately, could not be with us today, and neither could our treasurer, Michael, and Lauren is our representative from Northern Colorado and Wyoming. So when you come back, we will be here waiting for you. And then the other thing I really want to promote to you is AJET. AJET handles a lot of stuff, and a lot of things you hear today, a lot of those kinds of things will be on the AJET website. Support, teaching ideas. This is a fantastic resource, and when I was a JET, we didn't have it 10 years ago, but it is available to you now. So a bit about today's format. We're going to have 4 presentations, and we're going to spend about 20 minutes on each of them. We're a little bit behind, but we do have a grace period, so it's like we're running behind. What I want you to know is that we will have lots of time for Q&A and kind of answer the questions you really want to know about. And we've tried really hard to sort of tackle things that we know you're not going to hear later in the process. So you're going to have a pre-departure orientation. You're going to get to Tokyo. You'll be there for 3 days. You'll do lots of meetings there. Then you're going to go to your prefectures, and hopefully you'll have another orientation there. And then you'll go to your local towns, and depending on the size of your town and kind of what your very localized JET community is doing, you'll have another orientation. So there will be lots and lots of discussions that are going to happen. So we're going to try and tackle things that we don't quite expect to come up through the rest of these processes. So if you're wondering why we don't handle something that seems really, really obvious, it's because we know you're going to hear it 1,000 times after this. So that's how we're kind of balancing that out. So you did do the icebreaker activity, you all did bingo. Going to go out of order slightly, sorry. So what I wanted to point out is, so this is a bingo generator. This is not something I had access to when I did JET, but myfreebingocards.com, and it's very American, perfect. So the idea behind this was negatives and affirmatives, but there's lots of ways to structure bingo games. You could do future tense sentences, past tense sentences, so students have a chance to practice grammar patterns. You will get tons of these kinds of lessons through your many JET orientations. AJET has more stuff. Googling will produce a lot. But there will be lots of opportunities during your time to get ready for this. So a little bit about Tokyo orientation. So you will be taken care of. You will land, there'll be 1,000 people guiding you to where you need to go. This will be talked more about in depth at the pre-departure orientation. But a few things to know about the Tokyo orientation. One, you're going to be jet lagged, pun intended, but you're arriving at Tokyo weather-wise at the worst time of year. It's going to be really hot and it's going to be really humid. And how many people have been to Japan before? Okay, so usually it's quite a few people. So one, you've been to Japan before. Two, you will have plenty of time to visit Tokyo later, and you will have some time to go out and about a bit. There are little events and gatherings planned, but relax. Like, I know you're kind of amped up and excited and this whole new adventure is occurring, but you will be wiped out by the end of Tokyo orientation, so don't overextend yourself. Your attendance is mandatory and it is tracked, and I want to remind you that this is all being paid for by Japanese taxpayers, so do your due diligence and be very respectful. And then also use this time to meet other people, get to know people, exchange information. You'll be really greedy, especially if you're going to be at Naka and you want to travel. You want to know other jets so that you have people to connect with. Be very, in my personal opinion, be very liberal with friending people on Facebook during Tokyo orientation. If you don't use Facebook, whatever means you use to like kind of keep tabs with people, use that. I don't know, get them all on Instagram, right? So the other thing that I do want to bring up, I have to like do the very serious thing right now, is that there have been incidents in the past where jets have been committed a crime, and it is a very big problem, and it is a very big deal. And they always make national news, and it is very embarrassing. Also, not that it gets directly communicated, but if one of you from this region commit a crime and you are arrested and you make the national news, that reduces the reputation of this part of the United States, which is already a little dubious in the Japanese mindset, because guess what happened in Colorado a few years ago? They are very aware of that. So do not do that. No drugs, no drinking and driving. That is my serious senpai speech. I will add that there are very real consequences that happen. So you could expect, say, fewer jets being accepted from this region suddenly. The other thing I want to say is that in the Japanese mentality, we talk a lot about group mentality, but the way that actually plays out is, for example, in Okayama Prefecture, fill me in on the details if I get it wrong. In Okayama Prefecture, a high school teacher, Japanese, was caught drinking and driving, leaving a work party. And so the entire prefecture, no work parties. They just didn't do them for, was it a semester, a year?
I don't actually know how long. I think it might have been a year.
Yeah, so just nothing, because they had to show solidarity that they were responsible. On a note on drinking and driving, it is such a serious crime in Japan that if you are a passenger in the car, you are also arrested. So you have a responsibility to the people around you to show a good face and do good. So please do. So there, that's my serious part. So for all the things we've just been talking about, do you have any questions? Tokyo orientation, sort of like the jet experience, teaching, bingo. Just some very serious questions about bingo.
Are you going to go more into depth about the airport stuff?
That is pre-departure. So I can assure you that all that stuff will be like way easier than you think it's going to be. I can tell you that much. But that's covered in depth at pre-departure orientation.
What is going to happen for the days that we're at your orientation? Is it workshops? Is it lectures? What's going on?
Workshops, lectures, orientations.
Yeah.
Taylor, do you want to speak to that?
I did a presentation at Tokyo Orientation 2015, and the format keeps changing every year, but this past couple of years they've partnered with the British Council, which is another ESL international program, and they are running some teaching workshops that we'll get to do on top of other presentations and keeping fun. So.
Other questions? Looking at your brains. Yes. Oh yes. If you have certain types of allergies or you take certain types of medicine, there's something called the yaken shomei. Someone always forgets to do this every year, and at the last minute there's a huge panic. So the laws in Japan about drugs are very different than here. So I believe NyQuil is illegal, and it's not good for you to be bringing that in. Like it actually can turn into a big problem.
Allergic is illegal.
Which one?
Allergic.
Allertech?
Like generic allergy medicine is generally.
Is Claritin illegal?
Yes.
Claritin D, Sudafed, none of that can come into the country. So make sure, yes?
So, just wait a second.
Oh, no, go ahead.
This is more of a comment than a question, but I was looking this up and this is important. If anyone else here has ADD or ADHD, do not bring Adderall. It is crazy illegal. Talk to your doctor right now about getting a conservative prescription because it's legal there, and you can get that approved on the Shomei. But you will get deported right there if you bring Adderall. It's really intense. Just a heads up.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know there was an alternative to that useful.
Concerta.
So, yeah, these are all things to keep in mind. So this is, you should not be realizing this at the pre-departure the day before you're getting on a plane. You should do this now.
And in regards to allergies too, don't worry. They have plenty of their own allergy medications. Their pharmacies have more things than ours do. It's just they have different standards, so they have their own stuff. So when you get there, you can find stuff that says like allergy and things like that. Are really fine.
Did you have a question?
Yeah, so when you submit the paperwork for the Yakan Shomei, I guess I was looking in the guidebook and it says that the Ministry of Health then relays that to the consulate and you receive the paperwork during the pre-departure orientation. If for some reason there's a delay in processing the paperwork and don't have that before departing, I imagine you just jettison whatever it was within rather than.
That's a question for you, Yogi.
There are a couple of ways to do it. So it depends on the medication. Always we can do 2 weeks or 1 month supply. If it is more a serious medication, then it must go through the laboratory things. But if that's the case, we do it to make it out of the for some reason, like the roll was missing or some delay by them, we usually inquire see what we feel on the working date. And then at that time, we can search it. But usually, so that's why we ask you to contact me itinerary letter. That way I know who applied for the Yakan Shomei, so I can make sure that everybody's Yakan Shomei is in my hand, so I can figure out you. Before you enter, you have to make a copy. But I know you can't because you don't have time. You're already from the house. Especially from big city. So we will make a copy, 3 copies for you, 1 to keep, 1 for extra, and 1 you have to hand in. That's what but in the past, we will be notified way in advance from the time.
Please go
Just
ahead.
a clarifying question. So the last time I went to Japan, I went through the Yakan process, and they actually sent me it via email. So just to clarify, am I going to receive it during pre-departure orientation, even if we're done with the beginning?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Vic. Sorry.
Yeah, I will give you a copy.
Okay, so the last time I went through the Yakan process, they just sent me an email with the certificate attached.
Yes.
So in this case, will they do that again, or shall I expect it at the departure orientation?
Okay, so if something issue happened, so they will send me by email from Tokyo directly to me or our office. And at that time, we will forward it to you, and you can either print out at the airport or so in a sense, you don't have to have a hard copy if that's the case to get it in, to bring the medication in to Japan. Is that what you're asking?
Kind of. Mostly just that. So the last time I went to Japan, I successfully completed the Yakan process, and because of that, they sent me an email including the Yakan in it, and I just printed out a couple copies and it's fine. However, as it was mentioned earlier, in the handbook it mentions that you will receive it at the pre-departure orientation.
Right. The normal process is they will send us the hard copy.
Okay.
That's the normal process. But at the last minute, I noticed 3 days before your departure, the Yakan Shomi is supposed to come, has not arrived, which happened before. So we can inquire to Claire to find out what's going on. And sometimes they can send it to us, sometimes they can't. But at that time, it's not going to be a hard copy. There's no time. So we will deal with by email. But traditionally, they will necessarily send us the hard copy. You will see the ink, the stamp, okay, and report this. That's the one we will present.
And then we do have one question from the live chat.
Yeah, so question from live chat. What is the best way to get a doctor in Japan to prescribe any needed medication?
I bring a copy of the prescription that your doctor wrote you, and bring the box for any prescription you need to have refilled. If you can bring them the box and a doctor's note, and bring that with your Yakan Shome, and basically spam the doctor with all of the forms, they will have enough information to go off of to get what you need.
And so everyone's medical situation is very unique and different, and this is a very public setting for that. So Yayoi is here, and you can email her any specifics or concerns you have, but it is better to do it sooner, not later, just so everyone knows. Like, we can't take everybody's medical condition and answer them here, but just know that you will be taken care of. Okay. Any other questions related to orientation? Or?
We'll just go along those lines. What can we expect as far as health insurance goes?
It's very good.
It's covered. It's covered under your. They take it out of your paycheck a little bit. It's you go to a doctor.
It's nationalized healthcare. You're going to get a piece of paper that's, you bring it to all of your doctor's appointments, and basically you hand that over and they take care of it. It's fairly straightforward when you actually do it.
It's a very, very, very low copay.
Okay.
Okay.
A really quick follow-up. I was just reading in here that it doesn't necessarily cover dentist stuff.
Yeah, dentist is different from medical.
There's a distinction between medical dentistry, if you have something that goes on, you break a tooth, versus cosmetic dentistry.
I knew something had a graph and a knee break.
Okay, so that would be a specific
Okay.
follow-up.
Yeah, too specific. All right, so we're going to move on to the next presentation. I'm going to hand it over to Van, our vice president.
Cool. Hey guys. All right. So I wanted to go over the relationship you're going to have with your teachers and in the classroom, because probably that was, I think, the spot that wasn't covered well enough before I left. So I went through the process, and I felt really prepped to go to the airport and how it was going to work and get to my prefecture, and I was like, about the teaching. So hopefully I can answer a lot of those questions for you now, or at least give you an idea of what you're going to be looking at. So specifically, I'm going to try and cover the relationship with your JTE. Just to recap, these are some of my favorite teachers that I ever worked with, having a lot of fun, not in a classroom. You do make really good friends. So I unfortunately did this animation thing, bear with me. So sort of an overview of what I'll be covering. What I want to go over is kind of the ideal lesson prep, right? Like what is the ideal situation that you're going to find yourself in? I'm just going to call these up and talk about them. All right, so basically the image that they're going to sell you or have sold you so far is that you're going to a classroom with an with your JTE. The ALT's job is to basically support the main teacher, right? And they're going to tell you what to do and kind of give you clear instruction, and you're going to kind of make it more interesting for the kids and liven up the classroom and give them a better idea of what real English is like. So it's going to be the JTE's responsibility to prepare the lesson. They're going to be very clear, and this is your responsibility. We'd like you to create this game or this activity, and I'll ask you to do it about this time in the lesson. You're friendly, you've got time to plan, everything's great. Yay. It does happen, and cherish those. Everyone's happy. Yay. So, yay, there's me teaching. That's a good lesson, one of my favorite teachers. What is it actually like? All right, so a lot of times, everybody's rushed. You're running around, and as the ALT, your teacher comes to you and says, hey, I need you to make this by third period. Go, right? And you're like, oh, right, sure, game, third period. What kind of game? Okay, how much vocab? Oh, chapter 3 of that book. Okay, I've got 2 hours. Great, right? That's real. A lot of times you're kind of stuck in a bad lesson and it's a little bit ambiguous. It turns into sort of a translation or a grammar and vocab lesson where you're just kind of going through a worksheet by rote, line by line, translating, they're diagramming a sentence on the board. Or sometimes you don't even get that much time. Maybe it's like, I'm so sorry, I did not have time to really tell you about this. We have class. Here, let me explain what you're doing as we walk through the classroom. So your job is going to call for a lot of flexibility, and you're going to kind of need to start thinking on your feet. Now, some people are better. How many people have teaching experience right now? Okay, so a good number. That was kind of my feeling this year. That goes a long way. But you will learn this as you go. I won't say the learning process is always fun, but growth rarely feels good, but you are growing. Yes, and it leads to high tensions. You're like, why are you telling me this 10 minutes before, dude? You should have been an hour ago. So this leads to frustration. All right, so things that are a result of frustrations and these sort of non-ideal classroom situations. If you end up writing the majority of the lesson, and then you're the one explaining quickly to your JTE, they might not understand it. They don't have a clear concept of what the activity is and what you're doing. They're struggling to understand it. They're, okay, my last ALT never did this. We always did something else, right? So they're kind of trying to get their head around it. They get into the classroom. Maybe the only thing that you have included for them is to translate your idea to the kids, which is not really a great use of their skill set as a trained professional teacher. Translation takes a lot of time. If you present a worksheet in English to kids, if you have a super academic school, they might be okay with that. Or you might hit some landmines, and this happened a lot to me when I started because I didn't have a teaching background. We'd get, I'd have a set of instructions, and the instructions, there'd be a word in there that the kids hadn't encountered yet, so we would spend 5 minutes explaining the word, and that derailed the entire timeline of everything else because that was the instructions, not the activity. So translation takes time. Plan for that. Try to use vocab that's appropriate for your students. And you'll pick up that students get bored really easily. I think anytime you're dealing with a room full of people, you've got all personality types, you've got different styles of learners,
You'll get a real good, it's like a thermometer. You can just look out and see how many people are where and how many people are reading manga behind their book, and you're just like, oh God, I gotta pick this up. Frustration affects the students as well, and it'll affect you as a teacher, because you get over there, you're like, all right, I'm gonna have a great lesson with you guys. And then some of these problems come up, kids are tuning out, they're looking down, maybe like 2 of them are sleeping in the back, and you're like, oh God, I'm failing, I'm doing a terrible job. So then you start to freak out a little bit, and maybe you try to talk faster, maybe you try to like push through something that isn't like really well covered, and these are the things that derail lessons. I will also say that as Americans, we have a very common habit of trying to explain things by adding more words, adding more information, right? So it's like, all right, so what I want you to do is blank. And what I mean by that is blah, 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 right? And we just add content. But when you're dealing with ESL situations, you need to go the other direction. Don't talk more. Learn to stop. Let the teacher translate, kind of see if you can come up with a simple explanation that doesn't involve more talking, because that's not going to help. All right, frustrations are usually the result of expectations that aren't met. So what are some of the expectations we're talking about in a classroom setting? I think a lot of JTEs, they're going to have maybe a jet that's leaving before you that might have been there 1 year, 2 year, 5 years, right? They might be really good at working with kids in Japan. They're going to know the vocabulary. They walk out, your JTE's like, great, new person. Why can't you do the same things, right? So there's that expectation that you're going to come into this job and be able to do it perfectly right off the bat. That's not really the case. Scheduling, time limits on the teacher's time, being able to talk to you, being able to lesson plan. Whose job is it to make the lessons? How much of the lesson? These things, like I said in the first slide, there's the sort of ideal situation is it's all very clear. But in reality, it's kind of amorphous. And you'll have some teachers that are great at it, and you'll have some that are kind of a train wreck. And you might be somewhere on that scale as well. So you're meshing with another person, and you got to have the human factor in there. Looking ahead, kind of knowing what's coming in terms of the school schedule. There's a lot of stuff that doesn't get said, like, hey, we're having a sports festival in 2 weeks. You're not going to have English class for a week, right? But meanwhile, you might have laid out a schedule, including like a set amount of material you want to cover. So that can derail things as well. So sort of the communication, I guess, is the main root of this, right? Like making sure that you're in contact with your JTE and getting as much as possible. And then something to keep in mind, there's kind of a perceived inequality going on here. So a lot of teachers that we work with are young, first-year teachers that are coming into the system that have just graduated with an education degree. They'll be making a little bit less money than you to start as a gen. So they kind of have this impression that we're making huge amounts of money. For 1 or 2 years, we actually do make a little bit more. They get bonus twice a year. We do not. So yes, for I think it's 2 years, at least when I was there, we did make more, and then with bonus, they actually surpassed us and kept going. But a lot of teachers kind of have this conversation, like, it's not fair, you have less experience than I do, especially in my situation, not coming in as a teacher, they're like, why are you getting paid more? So, keeping in mind that as well. All right, so I guess the one thing I want to flag and make sure you all think of is in all of these situations, be compassionate. Try to think about the situation and why things are not working out well. Don't assume it's the other party's fault. That's usually a really good indicator that you have a hand in this, and you should probably look at that. One of my favorite quotes, be kinder than necessary, because everyone you meet is fighting some kind of battle. You don't know. Does their parent have cancer? Are they fighting with their husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend? You don't know what's going on in someone's life, and if you're receiving some sort of frustration and static because it's kind of a stressful moment at work, it might have other causes. So when you get to that point where you're frustrated, you're kind of not sure what to do, and you're getting really tense, and things are going bad, just step back from it for a moment. Remember this skill, just breathe, see what you can do to address the situation. It'll go a long way. And something that I found really difficult is not knowing that I couldn't see what was happening. I didn't know about the sports events. I didn't know, when I'd be teaching, and that led to a lot of frustration for me. You know, like preparing a lesson and they're like, oh, we're not actually going to use that lesson, and you'll be sitting at your desk for 2 weeks. So that was difficult for me, and that's something that I had to adjust to. Time management, a lifetime pursuit. Just going to leave that right there. All right, so in the sort of realm of compassion and knowing what might be going on in the background, I wanted to flag up some of the things that are going on for your JTEs. A lot of JTEs, like I said, are going to be young, new teachers, and in the Japanese school system, the kohais do a lot of the grunt work. So the senpais might manage the English department or might be in charge of like the year, like planning the enkais for the year or something, right? So everyone has duties outside of just teaching classes. And the young teachers get a lot of work outside of class, and part of that work is going to be you guys. So everyone has a head teacher that supervises you and is supposed to like help you do whatever you need. You know, whether it's medical stuff, whether it's, hey, you get to Japan and you didn't get left a bed. They have to drive you to a store, help you buy a futon, like take you home. And this is all in their time, their personal time. This is not them getting paid for it. So things that are going on in the background, a lot of teachers manage a sports club. Okay, so they'll be there 2 hours after work before coming back to the office and doing more work. Like I said, they might be running a department or, you know, doing the enkais for either the grade or sometimes the whole school. There might be some special projects. I taught at a science school where they were actually working with a college and they were doing like a joint presentation. So the senior class and the first year college students were doing joint presentations. And this was all after hours. They'd pick up, they'd go over, they'd do poster work, they'd come back. Again, you know, this is a lot of extra work. Keep in mind, people have families, you know, young kids in the mix as well. And you never know what someone's personal life is like. Japanese people really don't talk about it. Like, I had a couple of my teachers get married. They're like, oh, I'm getting married next week. I'm like, I didn't even know you were dating anyone. Okay, sweet, great. So, you know, you'll never hear about it until they're ready to make it public. And then, like I said, helping ALTs is a huge thing. And we're kind of helpless when we get over there. So just keeping in mind that it really is a big deal. So thank them. Let them know you appreciate it. All right, some ways that you can fix problems. All right, so how do you deal with frustration? What do you do? And I would actually pose this as a question to you guys. What do you do to deal with stress? Do you have an explicit thing? Like for me, it's exercise. I run, I hike, I bike. And I know that now. I didn't know that so much when I went to Japan. It was just sort of a side hobby. But knowing how you relieve stress, whether it's like having a drink, whether it's doing a craft or an art, or, you know, getting online and bitching about everything, like whatever it is you do, think about how that's going to play in. Because if you end up in a really countryside place where, say, you like going out and socializing, but you're the only person there, you know, that's a big roadblock to your stress relief. And that leads to you building up a lot of tension. See if you can start thinking of strategies now that will help you relieve stress, because you'll be dealing with it. Fatigue's always a big one. I don't think I'm gonna hit that too hard. Time management strategies are great. You know, it's gonna be something you're constantly working with, and just try to improve at it, because this is, I think, a formative experience for a lot of you, getting dumped with a huge workload, being like, make that work, go. One of the really hard parts that's kind of excuse me, unique to Japanese culture is a lack of criticism and feedback. So you might go into a lesson and you're like, man, that really tanked. That, you know, you looked at the kids, they weren't responding, wasn't good. So you go to your teacher, you're like, hey, how was that lesson? How'd I do? And they're gonna be like, oh, it was great. Or more precisely, they'll say, it was fine. And this is just a cultural difference. Japan will not give you feedback in general, right? Japanese people are very hesitant to criticize or say negative things about you. And I think as Americans, we use that to refine ourselves, maybe learn something and adjust. And so you're in a situation all of a sudden where you're not getting any constructive input on how to improve. So you're going to need to find alternative channels. Talk to other teachers in your area. Bounce things off your senpai jets around. You know, some areas, I know AJ's gotten better about it, posting your lessons or like sharing them and having people give you feedback, use them, or grab one that somebody else has done, and using that to get some perspective, not just doing the same lesson like, wow, it was bad last time too. All right, I guess I'll keep doing it. You'll have to seek out ways to get that. And I think a part of that is like figure out where to find resources. This was a big one for me. Without teaching experience, I didn't know how to like create a lesson from scratch. And as a result, I ended up reinventing the wheel a lot of times. Most of that stuff's out there. ESL is a huge field, not just in Japan, but around the world. Japan has the best program in the world. Other people have made lessons that you're going to be doing. If you're having problems thinking of ideas, get online. Like I said, AJET has a whole forum now for people to submit lessons that are specific to books that are used around Japan and like topics that you'll come up with. You can also just find private sites that have a lot of great stuff. Grab something, modify it. Don't do it from scratch. Don't bang your head on the wall. There might be a better way to do the job you're looking for. I think I've covered most of this, but I do want to actually hit on that point right there. We as Americans tend to overpower situations where it's like us and a Japanese person. We talk a lot. We're very, very outspoken from the start, and we tend to dominate. We're like, here, let me give you an idea. Now you go, give me an idea. But that comes across as very dominating in conversation in Japan. So do learn to step back, stop talking, and let them suggest. And be aware it's going to take a little bit longer than it would for someone from here. So do give them that time to give you ideas and feedback. Yeah.
Just know that the Japanese are much more comfortable with silent pauses. Americans have some of the shortest, there's actually a study on this, but Americans have the shortest capacity for silence out of a variety of cultures. And I'm from New York, so it's even smaller.
Yeah, and then I did want to say, one of the things that you'll come up with a lot, so if you're having problems in a classroom and you're feeling the pressure of the entire room looking at you, all these kids, you'll get them all eager at the start of class, maybe half dead and asleep at the end of class. It's a lot of pressure if you haven't taught before, and you'll feel it in the class. So my best advice, and you'll hear this again and again and again, but take it to heart, get the focus off yourself. Play a game, let the kids do something constructive among themselves. Games are amazing because all of a sudden the attention's on what's the rules, how do I play this, how do I beat my friends, and they're genius. And kids will have a lot of fun, you'll have a lot of fun. Case in point, this game. I was like, I don't know, can these kids handle Scrabble? Can they handle Scrabble in English? So I just made a board. I tried it at my academic school and it went over really well. And then I had another much lower level school and I was like, there's no way these kids are gonna be able to do this, like whatever. But I brought it in, I was showing the teachers, and they're like, let's try it. We took it in the classroom. This school, where I think the kids, like half of them cared about the class, and half of them were like, whatever, I'm gonna, do some sort of career that doesn't involve English. Why do I need to know this, right? This game, people would come up and ask me, they'd be like, hey, Sensei, are we gonna play Scrabble again? Like, they would break out their dictionaries, we worked over the rules, like, how do you layer up, and this was like classroom crack. Like, I'd be walking into class, and they're like, yeah, we're playing Scrabble! So like, this was a great example, and they had to use English words, and they had to ask what the words were. They'd be like, hey, what's this word? I looked it up in the dictionary. Can I use this word? No, you can't use that word. So, all right. So, yeah, do use games. So many points. All right. So, in conclusion, I just want to say, put out the energy that you want to receive. If you're putting out annoyed, frustrated, this isn't my responsibility, it's yours, don't be surprised when you get it right back. Broadcast what you want to get back from people, you'll see it work. Be assertive. If you think something is not going to work out well, or you think the kids can handle a more complicated thing, or you want to try something that the teacher's like, no, they absolutely can't do that. I'll be like, let's try it once. So be assertive, don't be overpowering. Don't mow down a teacher that has 5 years of experience, because it happens almost by accident. Do ask for feedback, ask the right people for feedback. Make sure you're making time to hear what the teachers want to do and plan. Sort of go to them proactively. If you're getting an issue where like you never really know what's coming until the last minute and then you're forced to make a lesson at night the night before, take a chunk of time and start maybe setting a calendar note. Like go to that person, ask them a couple days before, give yourself more time to work on something. Try not to blame, comes down to compassion. A lot of people find that you get a lot of free time. Don't just sit there and do nothing. Do something with it. You know, if you can relate it to the job, great. If you can learn Japanese at your desk, great. But if it comes down to, man, I didn't really have a plan in mind for after JET, maybe I should figure out what that plan is. Like, don't let it just kill your soul, right? Because they might park you at a desk for a week at a time, and maybe you don't know why. But do something to fill it. And my last point is, you guys right now, you're stoked to go to Japan, right? Like, you've all been looking for this, you applied, you went through this ridiculously long application process to do this. Don't get into a situation where every day is just kind of a grind, and you're like, doing my job, I'm so broke, okay, maybe I'll just go one town over for the weekend. Like, remember while you're going, remember the things that you're interested in that you're only gonna get to see there, and go do that stuff, because Japan is awesome, but if you get too nose down, it's really easy to get lost in the details and forget about all the cool stuff. So make sure you do that too. All right, thanks. Do you guys have any questions?
On average, how much desk time do you
Have you heard the acronym ESID? Awesome.
It's different.
Yeah, this is going to be the start of basically that's the answer for everything. Every situation is different. In my personal experience, I had tons. So I went to an area where they were not too interested in me being in a lot of the classes, so I was kind of like a highlight. Like when they needed native pronunciation, I'd come and I'd read a vocabulary list of 20 words, and they'd repeat after me to get the pronunciation, and then they'd go back to their class, and they're like, all right, thanks, see you next week. It was a little frustrating. And then towards the end, as I knew more what I was doing and could sort of proactively suggest stuff, almost none. Because I would sort of insert myself into situations like, hey, you're doing that class? Great. Can we do something about like superheroes in that? Sweet, okay. So yeah, you can find anything. I knew teachers who were taking their work home with them every night and slammed. And then there was me where I had so much free time. I got through all 3 sets of the Japan study materials that Jet gave away. And then I was like, okay, what's next? So
to add to that briefly, I was on the other end of the spectrum. I planned every single lesson I had. I taught 5 varying levels of English at my school. I actually contributed about 120% of their grade was my worksheets and my tests. I was in charge of my entire 50-minute class. The JT stood in the back and would occasionally go around and assist. So you get both. That being said, everybody does have summer and winter breaks. And spring break, kids graduate early if you're senior high school, so the workload does get lighter at points.
And I will add to that. Responding to every situation is different. I will say the counter to that is every situation is what you make of it. In my situation, I rotated schools every semester, so I taught over 5,000 kids by the time I finished JET. I was at one school where the JTE, which by the way, JTE means Japanese Teacher of English, he didn't have a background in English. He was a coach, but he just get to teach the English class because they didn't have an English teacher. That will happen sometimes. He did not like me being there because I was a threat, because I obviously knew he did not speak English. So this goes back to understanding their situation. He didn't not like me per se, he didn't like his own situation. So in that school, I started going to the social studies classes. I started going to the, like how we take English class, they take Japanese class, I learned literature. I learned to recite a couple of poems by heart. I learned that there are 5 continents in Japan, not 7. So it was a really cool experience. I got to do a lot of other things, but I put myself out there in different ways. You will run into unusual barriers, but your life at your school does not begin and end with your English classes. If you find yourself in a really difficult situation, there are ways to get around it. There are other people there who would love to talk to you, but maybe feel really nervous about it. So when someone walks up to you and for the 50th time you hear, "You're so good at chopsticks," don't be frustrated. Use that as a reason to start a conversation. Cool.
caveats for trying to get more involved with school activities.
Yes.
And
And that's coming up.
Is it? I got you, man. Don't worry.
Were there any questions on live chat? Oh, yes, we do have one. Any advice on how to make a good first impression?
Yeah, dress well. Be
Just
friendly.
really nice, and then dial it back after you see how everyone else dresses.
Omiyage is always a really tough one, a little presents that you should give to everyone. Everyone struggles with that.
I have a quick cheat. It's not super complicated. It's not super unique. Buy a Costco-sized pack of Starbursts. If they don't have them there, just put 2 Starbursts on everyone's desk. Like you don't have to buy everybody this big, immaculate present. Maybe your principal, but seriously, industrial-sized Starburst bag.
Think about an easy self-introduction you can do that takes 1 minute, so that when you meet people and they're not English teachers, and maybe their English is pretty marginal compared to the teachers you're going to be working with, you can simply explain yourself, where you're from. We always like to say all the things we're interested in when people ask about hobbies. Pick one. Just tell people that. So keep it simple. You need to give a very snapshot view of yourself and project it. And when people ask, just keep it clean and be like, great, so nice to meet you. Yeah, that's about it. Be careful about volume. We talk very loud compared to Japan, so you'll kind of notice sometimes you're just shouting at people, and you can dial that back a little bit. If there's no other questions right now, I'd like to probably go ahead and move on, just because we're getting late on this.
The other thing is, because the timeline is a little out of sorts, if you guys would like to grab some food or coffee, you are more than welcome to. We don't have to do a bum rush necessarily, but in throws, please feel free to get food. I realize you're probably getting a little peckish at noon, so if you'd like to grab something right after that. We'll kind of take a break at this point. Oh yeah, go ahead.
The good news is the recording's actually so
Wow. I know a good rule of thumb is there's a lot of solidarity between students and students, so they can so the thing about there are but it's also very much like gotta get my little whistle. So please continue to enjoy and quietly get up and grab more food and all that. Try to clean the house for us. I'm gonna hand it over to Taylor.
So, hi everyone, welcome back. My name is Taylor. I was an ALT for 2 years in Kagoshima Prefecture, and then I was a prefectural advisor for an additional 2 years after that in Kagoshima Prefecture. So I'll get more into that later. But is anyone actually going to Kagoshima or Kyushu maybe? Nobody? What? Nobody?
We all remember.
Oh.
Going to Kagoshima.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. I look forward to
Not
meeting you.
today.
Not today. Okay. Well, today I'm going to be giving the downer portion of today's presentation, and to remind you all that even though you're going on this amazing adventure and life-changing experience, that life still happens, and you're going to run into problems, big and small. No one's an exception. Hopefully they're small. And I wanted to go over the JET support network that's available to you, and specifically how to navigate it to make sure that your small problems don't snowball into bigger ones, because it's very easy to let that happen, especially when you're in a foreign environment and don't know how to deal with it. Okay, so like I mentioned, my job for the latter 2 years was a prefectural advisor, and just simple explanation, they're going to be more the administrators that help to run the JET program out of your prefecture. They are super helpful people, and you should get to know them. They're actually probably going to be the first faces you'll meet from your prefecture when you get to Tokyo, and the breakout sessions towards the end. And they're often usually the ones that are tasked to bring you back to your prefecture. So get to know them, super helpful. For prefectural advisors, there are typically three types. Each prefecture will vary in which type they have. But you'll have your Japanese government workers, usually former teachers or people who work in the International Affairs Department, will be your prefectural advisors. You'll have CIRs, which I think, do we have any CIRs here today? Not today. But Coordinator for International Relations, they usually work out of city offices or the International Affairs divisions. You usually have one of those. And then you'll have ALTPAs, so former ALTs or current ALTs that act in a PA capacity. And each of their duties kind of vary. JPAs are your team leaders. They are pretty much the people that are in charge in making policy for the JET program in your area. The CIRs deal a lot with language issues. So if you're at a job where you don't have a lot of English-speaking coworkers and you're trying to work out some work issues, they're a great resource to contact to help kind of mitigate that between your coworkers and you. And then the ALTPAs are people who have had a lot of classroom experience and can often give you a lot of teaching resource and just know a lot of the ALT experience. Yes?
I just want to add one reason to really know your CIRs in particular, since they sort of function as a boss when it comes to needing a letter of reference after JET program. Those are going to be one of your go-to people.
Yeah, very important. So, and like I said, each prefecture is different. Your prefecture might only have one of these or two of these. Mine was quite big. We had 6 PAs, 2 ALTs, 2 CIRs, and 2 JPAs. And again, their duties will vary depending on how many types they have there. So your prefectural advisors are mainly there to help you with your work problems. So if you're running into issues, communicating what you need from work, possibly a lot of issues that we got were related to time off, sick leave, housing issues, because your BOE, or your Board of Education office, your contracting organization is usually in charge of your housing. So a lot of things like that is what your PAs will deal with. But the thing to remember is that as helpful and supportive as your PAs are, they are not your bosses and in no way in charge of you. So they are a great resource for both you and your contracting organization. And we are advisors, not managers in that case. But in most cases, your supervisor might even not have a lot of JET experience or experience working with JETs, and will just defer to what the PAs have to tell them.
about certain situations. So if you're dealing with work issues, go to your PAs, to be simple. And this is just a little graphic to show you that when you do run into a work issue, it's very important to communicate that with your supervisor, your principal, first before going to the PAs. We've had a lot of situations where the ALT will come to us, they'll be like, oh, like it's not working out, we're having these issues, and then we would discuss it and then talk to their supervisors and principals, and they would be like, we had no idea there was a problem, and then run into this really embarrassing situation of kind of shaming your BOE or contracting organization. So very good to talk to them first. And we're actually a resource for both the ALTs and the contracting organizations. We serve both. It's important that you come as a group to us for work issues. Your PAs have also done a lot of research and a lot of work. Usually PAs, sometimes it's the AJET organization in your prefecture that's done this. But if you have not looked up already, if you type in your prefecture and JET program, typically there is a website full of amazing resources for you to look through. A lot on living in your prefecture. Our website in Kagoshima has a lot on English-speaking doctors, how to use the transit system, where to find certain foreign foods, medicines, anything and everything we try to put up here. So great resource for daily living. Second point for resources, we have the block system. I'm pretty sure most prefectures have this. I don't know how much it varies from prefecture to prefecture, but just to kind of create a greater sense of community, we have set up a kind of big brother, big sister type program in smaller areas within the prefecture. So Kagoshima, we have 11 prefecture or blocks that we blocked out, and they're just kind of there. The block leaders are there to help you just kind of get settled in, to help you deal with daily living within your own prefecture. It's just a great community support network there. They're also tasked as volunteers for first response in terms of crises. So if natural disaster happens or a car accident or something terrible, they're going to be the first person that you should contact, and then from there they would contact us as the PAs. So get to know your block leaders, the great people. Usually run a lot of events throughout the year, and they're really helpful for people who are living in more rural communities. Is anyone here moving to pretty rural areas? Okay, yeah. So usually in rural areas you have like 5 English speakers in your entire town. So if you're looking to make English speaking friends, like this is a great way just to meet people. And if you're dealing with a lot of personal issues and you don't really want to talk to anyone in your prefecture, JET, as you might learn very quickly, is a very small fishbowl microcosm where if one thing happens, everyone's going to find out kind of situation, because people talk. But there are great resources, listening services that are in Japan. One is run by AJET, which I think was mentioned earlier. These are a group of JETs that are current JETs that are volunteers and have been trained to be kind of listening counselors. I know they don't give advice, but they're a great group of people. They're available throughout the night with a lot of other services, or people are not awake, so if there is something that's wrong, you can always chat with them. It actually doesn't even have to be that terrible of a crisis that you're in. You could just have a bad day or feel like talking to someone because you haven't spoken English in a while. You can just chat them up. Cal Lifeline is a national program to serve all foreigners, and similar to AJET, they're a listening service. And if you're interested in this kind of work too, you can become a volunteer and do the training to do AJET. So if that is your thing, you can get involved. And then for more niche markets. So if you haven't discovered them online already, Facebook has a lot of great support groups or advocacy groups or just social places. So usually your prefecture itself will have some sort of AJET Facebook group,
with all of the pretty much ALTs, CIRs in that prefecture that you can communicate with. There was a Facebook group called Jet Ladies that was set up a couple years ago, actually by a person in Kagoshima, and it's actually taken on and gotten quite a few thousand members. And it's really just safe spaces to kind of talk and people and not have like, they're closed groups, so you don't have to worry about other people talking. Same for Stonewall. Stonewall's not Jet related, but it's LGBTQ plus community throughout all of Japan. They have a lot of great articles and supports, stories, things like that. Christian groups. There's us. Please join us.
All our Facebook.
We will help you get jobs afterwards. So
We will try.
We'll try. Networking. Vegetarian, VegJet is great because Japan is not the most vegetarian or even vegan-friendly place. So they do a lot of resources, promote a lot of restaurants and things like that. And Jet Setters is good if you're looking to travel a lot of resources, a lot of articles, people you can talk to. So, yeah, and there's even more resources than what I mentioned there. Jet is set up way better than real life, so you just need to know how to use them. So, any questions? Yes.
Did you experience some level of culture
Please, the question.
Oh yes. So the question was, did I experience any level of culture shock? I think culture shock's kind of a very vague term that maybe doesn't resonate with a lot of people. I think you get, at points in times, and I think it'll happen to everyone, a bit tired, a little exhausted, dealing with like daily life, dealing in a foreign environment, and you just don't want to deal that day. And I think that's where aspects of culture shock shows itself. But to actually like go there and be like terrified of something, I don't think will really happen to people who've decided to move across the world. So,
And I want to add to that a lot of people in here have been to Japan before. It is kind of surprised to experience culture shock again because you think it's not going to happen, but it will. The context is very, very different, but I've been through it twice. So just be aware that it does happen multiple times.
yeah, and that's why I kind of wanted to go through all the resources so you know how to deal with it right away before anything worse happens. So, yes.
You mentioned writing a presentation at your organization.
In most cases, yes. Okay, yeah. And we'll talk more about housing as well, but at least in all the cases in Kagoshima, housing was directed by contracting organizations. Yes.
Should we refrain from like either following the Facebook page for our prefectures that will actually be contacted by our contracting organizations?
No, you should definitely go out and join all of these groups now. Oh, sorry, repeat the question. So, well, can you repeat the question?
Oh, just should we wait until we've been contacted by our contracting organization to like and follow the Facebook page for our prefectures?
So, the question was, should we wait until after we've been contacted by our contracting organization to join a lot of these groups that I mentioned? No, you just join them now. In some ways, the kind of bureaucracy of things, it's a good way to find your predecessor if you have not talked to them already. I've definitely seen in our Facebook groups people who have contacted the Facebook group and then found their predecessor, and they can get that process started sooner, where it was before kind of bogged down in the offices.
Definitely help. And just so you guys know, we're asking the speaker to repeat the question because they can't hear it on chat.
Yeah, I keep forgetting that.
Do all of us have a predecessor in JET?
So the question is, do we all have a predecessor on JET? Answer is no. So sometimes you'll be the first ALT at your school. Sometimes your predecessor will have left early for a variety of reasons, and you'll have no one to talk to. So there's a lot of cases like that. Okay. Anyone else? Well, if you have anything more specific that you want to talk about, please approach me at any time. We'll have the roundtable sessions here shortly. So, thank you.
I gotta go to the other one. All right. So I've got two topics today to talk about. Rural and urban life, as well as living well in Japan. To give you some context, my name is Charles St. John. I just got back from Japan in 2016. I interviewed some of you.
And I interviewed him.
And he interviewed me. So I'll be talking about that. I worked at a senior high school in a very rural place, Totorishi, which is the least populated prefecture in Japan with no Shinkansen. The fastest trains are limited express trains to get there. The closest city was big city was either Okayama or Osaka, which were 2.5 and 3.5 hours away, respectively. So I was fairly rural, but I was in their big city. So Totorishi, which is actually showing up on the map. So I had a little bit of a blend between the two. I also traveled extensively within Japan during my time there. I went to over 30 different cities, so I visited people in areas more rural than mine. I took road trips into the middle of nowhere, and then I also went to big metropolises. So I've seen a lot, and from my friends' experiences living in those places as well as my own, I can give you quite a lot of background on that. And with that, we're going to start with rural living. It looks really nice. Japan is a very scenic place to live. Cool things about rural living. Notably, lower cost of living. Generally speaking, if you're living rurally, housing is just less expensive, like the US. If you're not by a big city, costs are lower. Also, there's a good chance your housing is partially subsidized or completely subsidized. For example, here is my friend's free house. They got a whole house to themselves, and they didn't have to pay any rent. That being said, there is a caveat in that regard. If you are rural and you're not paying a lot for your housing, and you're very rural to the point where you're getting yourself a whole house, chances are you're going to need transit because there's not a train by your house. So in that sense, you will probably be getting a car or at the very least a bicycle. Secondhand bicycles are very inexpensive. That one was mine. It was $100. It had 6 speed. Cars are also fairly inexpensive. Sometimes your school will provide it to you. Sometimes your predecessor will roll their lease over to you. Other times you might just have to rent or lease a car for your time out there. It's very inexpensive to do for the types of cars you're leasing because they're tiny little 2-cylinder smart cars, generally speaking. This was a bigger car that you saw out there, so it's not like you're buying a sedan or a minivan or something that would be more expensive. Generally speaking, you get by with very minimal cars because your speed limits are also only at like 50 miles per hour max. People will go much faster, but that's people will go much faster than that, but the max speed limits are quite low, and especially within towns, you're not going to be flying anywhere. So the good news about this, and while you're sitting there going, oh man, I have to get a car, oh that sounds kind of like a chore, if you're rural, you have a lot of freedom with a car. You can road trip. You can go drive into the mountains if you like outdoor activities. You can go camping lots of places. You can drive to more rural, small areas that have cool tourist attractions, scenic hikes, other things like that. So the cars will give you a lot of freedom if you're rural to either go into a big city if need be, or just get out and go do something for fun. Along with that, living rurally, you have a fairly simple lifestyle. Towns are smaller, stuff is closer, more convenient. My city I lived in, being a big city, but not really, I pretty much had one of everything, is like I like to describe it. I had one shopping mall, one izakaya area, one main street, one castle ruin. So you're being in a more rural area, things are simpler, but more accessible for that same reason. And it's much easier to befriend locals, find out local events and things that are happening because the community will be buzzing and getting ready for it. You'll know in advance. And much like the Midwestern U.S. and more rural areas in America, rural Japan is quite known for its hospitality, even relative for Japan. So it's a really good place to be if you're looking to get involved with your local community, because it'll be small and it'll be tight and they'll be happy to have you. Speaking of which, there are community events if you live rurally that you will most definitely know about and will probably walk by even if you didn't know about it. And they're really cool. Like, one day a bunch of food stalls popped up from local restaurants showing off their various meals and other things like that. And you'll get larger events too in your town. Like, every town will have festivals, cultural events, things like that, which you'll not only hear about being rural, but you'll also be probably offered to participate in. So this was a fire walking festival where they burned all of that, lit the ground on fire over here, and then you walked across it. It was really neat. And I still have feet, so it wasn't too bad. And then the last, And I mean, the last end of things with that is within a rural areas, you have local tourism. Japan is such a historic country that even the most rural of areas will have tourist activities for you to do, and you'll be able to experience a hidden Japan that even people within Japan don't get to see. Even in my rural areas, I would go more rurally, go to really crazy places like this place in a tiny town called Nimi, which has really impressive cave structures that they decided to light up in Technicolor. So there are all sorts of cool places. This was a road trip in Hyogoken. That's a mountain in the middle of my prefecture. And this is in Komatsu, which is kind of close to Kanazawa, one of the most impressive shrine and Buddhist monk areas that I've been to in Japan. So you can hit a lot of off-beaten things right in your own area, and people will be happy to show you. And with that, we're going to change gears, and I'm going to talk about urban living. So urban living is also cool in its own right, but there are some caveats to it that you might not be expecting, or maybe you are. The first one being higher cost of living. So this was my friend's apartment that she sent me pictures of. She's living pretty nice in Tokyo. She was paying 4 times the amount I was for rent. I was paying about $300 a month. So you can do that math. We make the same because everybody makes the same on JET. And she's also about 20 minutes away from work. She's on the outer edge of Tokyo, so she has to commute in. Living in the bigger cities, it's going to be more expensive, and there might be a chance that your housing won't be subsidized, or it'll be a lot less so because it's a lot more expensive, so the school might not be able to subsidize it as much. And that being said as well, your initial logistics, we'll stay on that one. Your initial logistics will also be possibly more difficult depending on your placement. Being bigger prefecture, bigger city, the CIRs and advisors might not have the same one-on-one time to be able to help you get your housing set up, or your cell phone or your bank account. Some prefectures, I've heard it falls on your predecessor to help you do that for you. Worst comes to worst, you don't really have everything, and your JTE, this is the first time they've ever actually had an ALT in their school, and they don't know what to do, so then you're both panicking, going to realtors looking for an apartment in a big city. That did happen the first year they ran Tokyo. The first year they took jets in for Tokyo. I believe it's a little bit smoother now, but it's something to keep in mind. That being said, with those scary logistics, you're in a big city. English is much more accessible in that regard. Big city banks will have somebody that can speak English, so you'll be able to kind of get that squared away rather than them panicking because an English speaker is walking in trying to set up a bank account. So it's a little bit of a trade-off. You might have to do a bit more work. It will be more expensive, but English is more accessible. So now with the not-so-fun stuff out of the way, the fun stuff about big cities. Big city amenities. So, more restaurants than you can possibly imagine, massive shopping cartades everywhere you go. You've got arcades and museums. There are clubs and concerts as well. You've got amusement parks. You've got, like I said, you have concerts. There's USJ, Disney Sea, all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I got to hang out with some band members. It was neat. He said I had good hair, which I laughed at. You've got other things as well, like stadiums. Notably, sumo is really cool if you can somehow get a ticket for that. Baseball is a blast and totally surreal to experience as well. Pretty much, if you're in a big city, there is something for anything. Osaka has a climbing gym in one of their malls. Literally, it's just, you think it's a store and you walk inside and it's 3-story, it goes to the ceiling and there's just rock walls everywhere. So there will be places, clubs, groups, and activities for you to find things that you're already interested in the big cities. And speaking of finding those things, living well. As was mentioned earlier, culture shock. Kind of goes like this, usually for people. You get out there, you got a honeymoon phase where things are awesome, you're finally in Japan, you made it, things are cool, food is great, all that good stuff. And then eventually, either due to work pressures, life pressures, language barriers, cultural changes, even independent of your location, new job, that type of stuff, things are going to wear on you a bit, you might dip. And then, ideally, you'll bounce back, and those are some of the tips I have for you now, is the ways that the happiest and most successful ALTs have used to enjoy their time in Japan, and hopefully bring you from here back up to there. Yes?
So, culture shock is this really weird thing that if you haven't experienced it before, you're like, well, that seems weird. You know, like I'm going to a country that's totally different. Of course, I'm going to be ready for this, right? But like, what you don't notice is that it sneaks up on you, and all of a sudden, like, at least for me and people that I watch, it manifests as like this bizarre, irrational anger. Not at people, not at Japan, but at like the weather or something. I'm like, why is it so cold for the 5th day? You know, stupid rain, stupid trees, and like, it would just be ridiculous. I'd be seething mad, right? And then when I actually like took a second to look at it, I'm like, what is going on here, right? And like, it creeps up on you and it makes you start acting really irrationally. But you can't, like, you know, for me, like I think I mentioned, I didn't have like the best stress coping system in place until I started running and biking more. And so like I didn't realize what was going on until I developed like the ways to get rid of stress. So just be aware that if you start getting kind of weird, like it might be this. And just kind of like keep that in the back of your head and be like, oh, this might be that crap right there.
That is a great way to describe it. You might get annoyed, you might get just fatigued, you'll just feel tired for no reason. Just every day will become potentially exhausting or frustrating for you. So that's more like what it feels like. It's not just this sudden, why can't I have a hamburger feeling? Although that might happen. And along with that, our first tip. Go ahead, find your Western restaurants. Find food you like. McDonald's and Starbucks are everywhere, even in my prefecture. But my big first tip for you is to become involved in your school, which I guess answers somebody's question earlier, which was, how do you do that? Really easy. Just go and show up. No, it's hang out after school for a little bit, wander into some of the clubs. The kids will be ecstatic to see you and show you what they're doing, because this is the stuff they like to do. And you can just walk on in, they'll be showing you, they'll be really excited, and you'll be able to participate. And then, in that regards too, you'll also possibly get the opportunities to participate in things like school field trips, sports day, after school clubs, things like that. You could even, if you want to, become a coach for one of the classes. I knew somebody who became a basketball coach for one of the schools. Do bear in mind, huge commitment. 6 days a week, probably about 2 hours a day. You'll be there, you'll be at the school on Saturdays. If you decide to become a coach. If you don't, and you just start showing up occasionally to basketball, They won't expect a commitment from you, but the kids will be happy to shoot baskets or something like that. I played badminton quite a lot with my JTE since he was the badminton coach, so every time I'd show up, he'd throw me a racket. So yeah, become involved with your school, and that way you will most notably give your students a chance to interact with you without the pressures of the classroom and grades and rules, and they'll open up to you a lot more as a person, which will make your classroom environment a lot better. And in that regard, JTEs and other teachers seeing you outside of just the classroom and just the office where everybody's doing work, you'll also seem more like a person to them rather than just an ALT. And that's when you'll be able to socialize with coworkers. You'll be able to hang out with them. They'll invite you to things. You'll be able to see them after school. You'll be able to have people to talk to if they're English teachers. If they're not English teachers, they might want to work on their English with you if they liked English. If they have no English but you share common interests, you'll be able to work on Japanese, or at very least mime stuff through, and hang out with them in that way. But socializing with your coworkers will go very far for you in regards to building rapport in your school and becoming more than just a temporary, oh, this is the guy who's going to talk English for a year or two. And in that regard with socializing with your coworkers, ask them for recommendations. They've been living in that town probably their whole life. They'll know stuff. They'll want to share it with you. They'll want to show you things. You'll be arriving during summer vacation. Students aren't there. This is the only time of year that they can go out for lunch. They will be going out for lunch. If you walk up and say, hey, do you know any good restaurants or something? What their answer will probably be is, yeah, we do. We're going there in 30 minutes. You want to eat with us? And they'll bring you along. And that goes a great way for first impressions as well as long-term rapport with your teachers. Other things too, you've got local resources. This was my Japanese teacher. My city's library offers free Japanese classes for non-native speakers. So he taught me English. He was also teaching a few Indian immigrants English. They were kids of restaurant owners who are out living in Japan now because their parents opened up a business. He was free for me. I know other areas you might have to pay, but it's a very minimal cost, and it's definitely worth doing. If there's not this type of resource, there's probably something like Toastmasters or English-speaking clubs that you can find out about, probably again through the library, or even through the Board of Education. They'll probably know, and you can become involved in them if you want to work on English or work on Japanese and find some other people to hang out with. I know a local college of mine also did have an international students group that would meet up and hang out, and they're from all over the world. Some of them were out studying Japanese, other of them were studying farming machinery and equipment and engineering because that's what the school specialized in. So there are ways to meet people and make the most of your local resources in that regard. And one of my biggest pieces of advice, become a regular. So find a few restaurants you really like, go there frequently. Eating out in Japan is a lot less expensive than eating out here, and grocery shopping in Japan is a lot more expensive than here. So the disparity is pretty minimal between cooking for yourself and going and buying food somewhere else. And in that sense, you'll save yourself a lot of time and you'll get the chance to socialize with locals, improve your Japanese, meet some people outside of the context of work, and you eat good food. I made very good friends with these restaurant owners to the point where they were inviting me to family and estranged friends' birthday parties, as well as preparing great feasts and other things like that. And occasionally they would drive me out to onsen in the middle of nowhere going like, hey, we're going, want to join us? Like, go to the hot springs for a bit. So at one point they offered me their car, saying if you need a car to go somewhere, you can just take ours. Not a great idea, don't do it, but that's the kind of rapport you can build in a very short amount of time by just being present regularly at places and being friendly. And that's part of your job as an ALT, is for cultural exchange. meeting people in the community, giving them a chance to use English, learn about a foreign country, that's part of your job as well. And this is a great way to do it while also benefiting quite a bit for yourself. On a totally different section, and Taylor mentioned this a lot earlier, connect with JETs. You've got all those groups, you've got your local JETs, your local people, your senpais, the people that are sticking around renewing their contracts. They'll know the doctors, they'll know the good restaurants, they'll give you the tour, they'll tell you the secondhand stores where to buy dressers and other things that you'll maybe need for your apartment. They'll know everything for you, they'll help you out. On a larger scale, a lot of those JET pages, the block pages, organize events that you can hop in on if you want to travel a bit and check out something, do something new. I went to a bunch of different events that were run by ALTs, so we ended up, one of the CIRs organized a trip to hike up a mountain and spend the night overnight with monks at the base of the mountain at one of the temples. This one was actually for a tourism organization that coordinated with JETs. It was aimed at international travelers, so they asked if they could borrow some international people. So we went canyoning, which is where you strap on a bunch of pads and ford down a river, like swimming and jumping and hiking and cliff diving off of it. It was awesome. Other big ones every year, the Sapporo JETs invite a bunch of ALTs out for the Yuki Matsuri snow festival. I went skiing after that, just since I was already in Sapporo. Okayama runs the Hadaka Matsuri. For those of you who know Japanese, it translates to Naked Man Festival. You get to participate. It's pretty wild. There's all sorts of stuff going on all the time. The JETs know it, and the local chapters will organize it. So if you want to socialize with English speakers, people that have commonalities in job and lifestyle, great groups to hang out with, great ways to experience Japan. Along that line, travel a bit. Like I said, Yuki Matsuri. You can a JET will organize it. They book out a whole hostel. You just have to forward them some money, and you reserve your spot. Makes it real easy. Traveling around Japan, I did a road trip here, bounced down to Kyushu there. But also, traveling in Japan is very easy to do, and there's JETs around. You can crash there. If not, hostels are $20 to $30 a night. Very easy to do. Highly recommend doing it. It's a very good way to get out of your ruts if you are in a little work rut where you're like, all right, 9 to 5, 9 to 5, 9 to 5. All right, weekend. This is a great way to refresh. As well, so on larger breaks, some ALTs use Japan as a hub and travel internationally. The yen is strong, especially in Southeast Asia. So you can some of them traveled all over the place. And used the strong yen to be able to experience other Southeast Asian cultures. I myself traveled out to Sri Lanka, of all places, and spent a week out there during Golden Week to escape the madness of Japan during Golden Week. So you can travel, it's easy to do. Highly recommend doing it at least a bit. And my last tip for you is do experience Japan. Japan's got tons of history, culture, and new exciting things as well. It's worth trying to get the most out of it. So join your local festivals, enjoy teaching, enjoy spending time with your students, sort of vicariously experience high school life, Japanese high school life. Go ahead, sit in the fourth row seat back, look out the window, pretend you're a protagonist. Feel out. Visit new places, visit old places, go to the conventions if you're big into that type of stuff. TGS and Anime Japan's kind of wild. It's a car show for entertainment. Smaller conventions are really cool too. I know somebody who goes out to the Toho conventions, which is like doujinshi and music groups that make their own CDs. Find your niche, experience that out there while you can, and really make the most of it so you can come back and then show it off to people. It's a what you're supposed to do on JET. You're more than just a tape recorder. You're supposed to bring English culture to there, but you're also supposed to experience Japan. And the best way to enjoy Japan and live well out there is to really experience it and find the good things that you can. Find the good things that are there, out there. And with that, does anybody have any questions? This is the last of our big questions before we go into roundtable for specific ones.
Do you know anybody who went home during, or used their vacation time to go home?
I did actually. During winter break, my parents bought me a ticket because my grandparents really wanted to see me, which was fine by me because my current trip, which was to go into Nagano and go skiing, was starting to get a little pricey. But yes, it is possible to do that. It is a little expensive because of high travel time in the U.S., so your ticket prices are going to be up in there. So if you decide to do that with those at Thanksgiving time, but yeah.
If you really want to travel during an American holiday, you should plan well in advance. I went off seasons. I also tricked my mom and told her I wasn't coming home and surprised her. So, but yeah, summer is definitely easier to travel than winter in the schools and session.
Yeah.
This is kind of a specific question. I don't know. It's not like relative to this panel specifically, but it's not really relative. I mean, relevant to anything. If that's okay. So I basically have a situation where I'm engaged right now, and we were hoping to get married in the spring, and then she would come for the last 3 months of the program and live with me. But I also heard that if you want to extend and they like you, they ask you for the early.
They do.
How would I go? Because my town has about 30,000 people in it.
Okay.
How would I go about finding a job?
In Japan?
Yeah.
Alright, so if your spouse is coming to Japan and you need to find them a job or they want to find a job, it will be difficult. I did know people who are married out in Japan. One of them was an ALT and the other person was not. They need to get the proper work visa prior to coming out here to allow them to apply for jobs and work at places. Jobs are limited if you don't have Japanese capabilities, and I mean like close to native level. Because if you're working in a Japanese company like a conveni or something, you're going to need to be able to talk in Japanese to the Japanese customers that are buying your stuff. So that'll be tough, but in Kaiwas and other English schools that are not associated with JET are usually a decent way for them to find some sort of work. And Taylor would probably know a bit more.
I was just going to say, if you're going to rule in here, you'd be very surprised how many initially hires there are. Other than that, I don't know what else you could find, but you're looking closer to a bigger city. I know one of our CRIs, or actually a professional advisor CRI's husband, found out that the local university. And so there are a lot of opportunities in this kind of work. It might take a lot of time, but it is possible.
Yeah. And on that topic, because of contract renewal, to clue you in on that, this will go along with living well. You get your contract renewal usually right in that dip, because it's right when winter is settling in. It's the busiest. You're entering Japan at the busiest time of the school year. The fall winter semester is the busiest for everyone. The load lightens substantially come spring because winter and spring is when school ends and starts again. So it's like the last big push before the end of the year. So work's gonna be stressful. Weather's gonna start getting bad. Culture shock at some level will start to be settling in.
Holidays in America are happening that are not being celebrated in Japan.
So
Going
Facebook's
to work
gonna.
on Christmas Day is super weird.
Yep. So things to keep in mind with that when you do want to renew is to consider that it is going to be the weirdest time, and that would be a good time to talk to either senpai ALTs or call the lines, kind of hash things out and really weigh your pros and cons before you decide to sign the paper. Either way, but yeah, do weigh that and keep in mind that it's going to be a lull when you're getting that, and that it will be a lot easier and a lot more fun come spring.
Yeah, I also wanted to add to that is from this side, the JET program looks really slick and it looks like this really unified, well-executed program. And you get to the other side, and it's like the other half of the Death Star that they haven't finished yet. Hundreds of small boards of education all networked together through the prefectures up to the national level. Everyone's doing slightly different things, has slightly different needs, and they're all trying to like funnel that up to get you guys to come every year. So there's a lot going on, and they start asking you questions about if you think, do you intend to renew? Do you think you might want to stay another year in like November, December? Right? Because what they're trying to do is be like, do we need to pass this up to the prefecture, who will then pass it up to national, who will then start talking about the numbers of jets they need next year, right? So the earlier they start on that, the better they have. But it's weird. November, you've been there a couple months, you're like, wow, I finally just figured out how to make my way to school without a map every day. They're like, so you're going to stay next year? And you're like, what? So yeah, it'll come really early, and it is maybe not the best time to ask, but yeah, be ready for it. Yeah. I got a question from live chat real fast.
Okay, cool. And then we'll do yours next. All right.
So the question was, what clothes to bring, both casual and work?
What clothes to bring for both casual and work? The answer will vary greatly for men and women. Men, it's pretty easy. This is summer attire. Cool biz, so button-down shirts, slacks, nice dress shoes, belts. Pretty much across the board. If you're elementary school, you might be able to get away with kind of like chino pants and a polo, because little kids are going to be slobbering all over you, so things are going to get messy no matter what. But high school, definitely this. Winter, suits, ties, or sweaters and ties. I basically wore exactly what I'm wearing right now with a sweater and a tie on it, and I was good to go. That's generally a good rule of thumb to follow. For everyday wear, check your weather and talk to the people that already live in the area. Coordinate on those JET Facebook pages. Ask them what they wear, because if you're placed in the mountains or in Sapporo, it's going to be cold. If you're coastal down south, it's going to be real hot. So it'll depend.
Also for women, would you mind addressing that one?
Yes.
Okay, so for what I have on right now, I would have to wear cardigan with the arms and probably kind of on the that's the kind of clothing that they are. We are not using exposure every time. So you will definitely use the work, kind of like with the men, V-line skirts or dresses, suit dresses. You will need a jacket or two when you have formal occasions at the schools, which I know you have for facilities. Cardigans, you can wear camouflage, but just make sure that they are not down here showing all of your business. Make sure that they are up, covering all of your cleavage. Make sure that you have shirts that come down long enough to bring it back. When you sit down and bring down, exposing the back is not the thing. So make sure that your shirts are long enough for both men and skirts. You do need to wear stockings. Japanese do not practice wearing their legs to work with you in America for the summer. So you will need to put pantyhose with you. So if that's something that you're not used to wearing, I would suggest practicing it over the summer. Because if you're not just comfy and comfortable, it will be easy to actually do it. So, casual wear, it kind of goes the same thing. Keep it decent and nice. No booty shorts, obviously. You will see Japanese younger girls wearing them, but one that's because they're not packing them back, so they will be decent. And their legs can be shorter, and it's acceptable in their culture for them, but it doesn't necessarily apply to you. So, if you do wear shorts, wear Bermuda shorts, or at least something that comes around from your thigh. Same for skirts. Jeans are always acceptable. They're becoming really big in Japan, and everybody has a tone pair, so that's perfectly fine. But keep it clean though. If you do wear shorts, none of the cut off with the pockets exposing or all the string coming down the side, because as they said, you are an ambassador for America, so you want to have that image of yes, you can wear your crap together. So, t-shirts, obviously nothing with obscenities on it. People do read, and they do retain. So things that have swear words on it, please do not wear those, especially if you teach younger children, because we will repeat it to somebody.
Hair. Pretty much the Japanese are fairly minimal maintenance. Make sure your hair is clean, obviously. You can put it in a ponytail, you can have it down. Sometimes you'll see them, they have like one little hair clip and then it's to do something, but they never really do elaborate cleans with their hair. So if that is your thing though, you are more than welcome to do it. We don't do it to the point where it overpowers or overwhelms or does too many things to you. Makeup is also minimal. Japanese women on the whole, when you come on BB cream and foundation, a little bit of mascara and it's a lip gloss for the working environment. They don't wear heavy makeup, they don't wear red, purple, or any of those fancy colors that are in trend right now. Eye makeup to a minimum. You can wear eyeliner, I don't think that's going to be an issue, but do keep it classy and simple. Obviously, don't look like a raccoon going to work. Other than that, I think you're fairly
Yeah.
I was thinking just real quick to all those things. Lay off cologne and perfume. Japan is not very concerned about it. It seems really pungent and it's not pleasant.
It's for people who work in there. Or for people who work in hosts and hostesses and do more of social things. So, thank you for adding that.
Yeah, I've heard from students and they will talk. They will say new stuff. So.
And to tack on for guys, you reminded me of a couple ones. For guys, if you want to have facial hair, fly to Japan with it. If you don't have it and you show up to work and then you grow it, they will ask you to shave it. If you show up with facial hair, that's your bar. As Adam and Yvonne mentioned earlier, set your bar high. You can start messing with it later, but start here. Don't start here and try and salvage your way back up. It won't work. So yeah, if you want to do facial hair, clean facial hair like you guys kind of have right now is cool. And bring that with you to work that first day. And just keep in mind, if you ever do shave it, it probably will not be ever. You won't be able to put it back on. Like they won't let you grow it back. They'll mention like, hey, that's getting kind of long, and then you gotta shave it. And as far as hair color goes, you're in a school, they already think you dye your hair because it's not black. I was asked on multiple occasions where I dye my hair. So that's a cultural exchange, but if you have multicolored hair, they will ask you to dye it because students can't have dyed hair. And until they get to college, then they can, so then they throw on a ton of makeup and everybody's hair turns orange. You'll see it because that's what college kids look like in Japan. They have orange hair and lots of makeup. But since they can't do it in high school, you really shouldn't either because you're their teacher.
A safe point of view is if your students can't do it, you can't do it.
Yeah.
Such as taking yourself over the class.
Yeah. All right. So we had a bunch of numbers. Yours was next, then you. All right, go for it.
It was about, when school starts. So when we get there on July 23rd, the orientation, et cetera, about how long is it?
3 weeks to a month.
3 months?
3 weeks to a month, yeah.
Okay, and are we going to be working in the schools during that period of time as well?
So yes, you will. So when you first get to Japan, you will first be working. Yes, you will be working at your school. You will be expected to show up every single day. What you will be doing is really getting acquainted with the school, starting to do some lesson prep, reviewing your previous ALT's materials. Very useful stuff to have and look through. And then eventually you'll start planning lessons for the students coming back. But things will be pretty mellow when you arrive. Expect it to ramp up to 11 once the students do get back. So use that time to socialize with your teachers, go out to lunch, hang out with the clubs. The kids are still there for clubs. Meet the students before you meet them, then they get to brag about meeting the new person. But yeah, it'll be pretty mellow until it's done.
Okay, this is for her actually. Sorry, I'm really practical.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, so in general, for going to and from the gym, and also being at the gym, if you're doing something really close to the height and standards and stuff. So is it appropriate to wear your gym clothes to while you're traveling to the gym, or do you want to change wear and you wear what would be your at the gym?
You good question. So starting with the gym, obviously everyone likes to work out, which is and it's perfectly fine. Wearing leggings is okay, but do make sure that you are wearing a t-shirt on top preferably, and one that comes down low enough that covers your back. The backside, Japan, I just is conservative. You will not see anybody or anyone running around with their sports bra and without running. So if you do wear something, make sure to take up where your nipples is covered, at least. If you are running, you have more leeway, so having your arms there is perfectly fine because you're athletic and you're going to sweat, so obviously. But to be safe though, you can always just wear a t-shirt and APT to make sure that you're covered. For going to work, that is not really an issue as long as you give yourself ample time enough to change before you have to go into work. Most people on the whole in Japan, from what I remember when I used to go to school in California, most people dress going as they are once they're very so it's not forbidden.
There will be a locker room for the teachers at the school, just so you know. So
I meant more for like going to the gym. Like, do you wear your gym clothes when you leave your apartment?
That's perfectly fine, yes.
Yeah.
You can do that.
What's your personal life?
In honestly, just be covered, and then you should be fine. One thing I did want to add was jewelry for women going to work. Because in Japan, having your ears pierced is not as common as it is here in the US. So each school may be a little bit different. So you will need to ask them if you can wear earrings, and if they say yes, they're going to have to be very, very small studs. No hoops, no chandelier earrings. Necklaces will probably have to be on the smaller side because, again, in Japan the rules are very strict for students, and they cannot wear any jewelry at all, except maybe a watch. So you will have to go in accordance with that. So probably like the necklace that you're wearing, the statement necklace, might be okay, but again, you'll have to double check with them. They're very, very simple. They don't wear bracelets unless it's their wedding ring. You really don't see them wearing rings either, and they may have a watch on. But again, when you get there, observe what your other female teachers are wearing, how they dress, how they accessorize, and follow them, because that usually sets the tone for the school. Any other questions?
That's actually, I'm going to directly related to that. As far as the work environment, the pants is going to accept stuff?
Yes. Pants are perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them.
Can you talk about shoes?
Of course, I think that when you go into a school, you're supposed to take a bath and have a separate pair of school shoes. Is that
depends on the school.
There's a few schools that don't. Most schools do, and you just buy like shower shoes basically and walk around in those all day. It's awesome.
It does depend. When I was going to school, most of the teachers wore a pair of inside tennis shoes or sneakers that they had because they do a lot of walking and they're the most comfortable. Men and women wore both tennis shoes. You pretty much, I think color is basically white that most teachers wear. I haven't really seen any teachers wear like, the super colorful Nikes and Adidas that we have, anything flashy. But again, it really does depend on the teachers at your school. So the first day you go, you're not expected to have them. They'll probably give you slippers, like Charles just said. And you can walk around in those for like the first week. And when you do that, observe the other teachers and what they're wearing for their inside shoes and go according to that. In some cases, I have not witnessed this myself, but I've heard about them. There are some female teachers, like especially if they're the nurse, or if they're like the office lady, the person that does the tea and all the small cafe office, she might be toting a pair of heels around in school just so she can look cute. I don't think they're practical, but I have seen those. I would not recommend it because I guess if you are walking and on your feet all day long almost, so a pair of good sturdy shoes, like tennis shoes or sneakers are much more valuable because they will not only last you longer, but they're way more comfortable.
I went to a mall and bought like the little, basically shower shoe as type of slip-ons, like a week after I was there, just because that was kind of the shoe already. That's what most of my teachers were wearing too, and during the summer, it feels real good not to have sock then shoe. So, yeah, she's right.
And then the sandal that a lot of women wear in Japan, they get them at specific stores, and you can ask your colleagues where they got theirs, because they're like a little slip-on, kind of like a move, a little lens. They're very comfortable, but they're still cute, so you have that option of buying those as well. With that, with shoes though, if you've got larger feet, it can be a challenge getting shoes in Japan, especially as a female. I wear an 11, so pretty much women's shoes were out of question. in Japan, so I had to take all of my shoes with me. If I wanted to buy sneakers, I could buy men's sneakers because they came in my size, but that's pretty much what I was limited to. So if you wanted to buy really cute shoes in Japan, you have to be on a smaller size, preferably between like a 5 and a 7. That's the average size for Japanese women, because they're penny. So anything above that might be a challenge. Doesn't mean that you won't be able to find it, but they're not going to be as easy to find as here in the U.S. So if you have larger feet, I definitely recommend you taking what you need with you.
Same for men. I think the largest size they go up to is 11.
There are big and tall shops that sell larger, and if you go to Tokyo or Osaka, the international shoe stores like Onitsuka or Nike or something will have your size larger, but they might have to special order it in.
But yeah, if you're stuck in rural areas.
Yeah. All right, another question.
Yeah, so would you recommend that we set some money aside and just do this sort of Japan buy or market when we get there?
All right, set money aside for Japan. Yes, the recommended amount was what, $2,000, something like that. If you bring more, you get more spending money. Smart move. It's really weird watching people's spending habits. In my area, we all moved into the same apartment complex. They stuck all the ALTs in one ALT apartment. I barely burned through $1,000. Other people I knew somehow managed to spend their $2,000 before they even got to their after they're like, oh man, can somebody spot me for my cell phone contract because I spent all my money in Tokyo somehow. So it depends. If you can bring more, go ahead and do it. Because it's not going to hurt. Right now, the dollar is strong relative to the yen, so buying money now and bringing it out there and having more is a good idea because we don't know how it's going to swing. But either way, once you're in Japan, you're operating in yen. You're not operating in dollars, so starting strong is a good idea. I brought $4,000 with me, and like I said, I only used maybe $1,000. But then I had a nice little nest egg, which let me feel comfortable with early travel and other stuff like that. I wasn't penny pinching until my first paycheck came, which it comes a month after you start because of the weird time difference of getting you into the system, getting bank account set up, etc., etc. So you get a double paycheck at the end of the month.
One more thing for makeup. In Japan, because they are more...
Can I ask you to just come up front?
Oh,
Yeah.
How do you write everything for the online people?
That means we stand as part of this different.
Just anywhere in here will work because the computer should hear it.
Okay, makeup because Japan, you know that their base tends to be yellow. So if you are particularly fair and more white, that might be an issue. So you will want to take your face makeup, your BB cream, your foundation with you. Same for dark skin girls like me. You are not going to find makeup in Japan. So you will definitely need to take that with you and take a decent amount of supply if you wear makeup. If not, that's not a problem. But sometimes it can run into an issue because when girls go to Japan to buy makeup, it's more yellow and makes them look a little bit more orange rather than fair. So if you are particularly fair, you will definitely need to take whatever it is, CoverGirl, Maybelline, whatever you use with you, so that you don't have to worry about panicking and having to have it shipped to the US last minute.
On the men's side, also antiperspirant, well, I guess for everyone, antiperspirant is really rare in Japan, virgin or non-existent. You can get deodorant, but they're typically the really small size.
And it's in a spray.
Yeah,
It's in
so
a spray.
if there's like a brand that you like or you like antiperspirant specifically, not just deodorant, consider taking some.
Good point. You will sweat a lot. Go ahead, buy the sport ones with the higher antiperspirant content in it. I brought 5 of them with me, and then I kept having my parents mail me more. That being said, you can mail it. So if you need a restock, you can order Amazon internationally, but I'd recommend just care package it. All right. You and then you.
On that note, I was reading on one of the JET Facebook pages for Yamanashi that people are worried about antiperspirant and sweating. It's a couple of people had written, don't even really worry about it because everybody's sweating. Nobody really cares. It's not a big deal.
They don't smell.
Also, but foreigners smell funny?
Yes.
Yes.
Japanese people.
Smell than we do.
Yes, that is the answer.
And unfair.
Yes.
I smell half as much, maybe.
Yeah. I threw out a lot of shirts on my way back, so. Your question.
So, you were in a more rural area.
Yes.
Does that affect how care packages were sent and how shipping or whatever happened?
Not at all. Japan Post crushes it.
Okay, because when I was studying abroad, they had this whole thing, at least I was in Osaka, and they had a whole thing of, if you aren't there when your package gets there, they'll redeliver it. Was that the same case for you?
Yes, and generally speaking, if you aren't there when it shows up, they bring it back to the local post office branch. So just find out where that is, walk in saying, you left me a note saying I have a package, here it is, they'll give it to you. Any other questions? This has been good. Yes?
I was actually curious, would there be anything that we possibly do ahead of time as far as opening these bank account, or is that something?
No. Generally, the advisor or your JTE, depending on the city, will go with you and get all of that taken
Your
care of.
contracting organization might open your bank account for you, so you need to use the
Also
bank
true.
account they set up.
Oh, yes. So bank accounts will be taken care of for you when you get out there by someone. Don't worry about it.
I was looking in the Jet guidebook and it suggested trying to find a bank that had some sort of relationship with your U.S.
May or may not be possible.
Yes, so sending money back and forth to the U.S. Doing it in large lump sums through the Japanese Post Service is actually really good. There is Go Remit. You will get flyers and posters and all sorts of other stuff at the orientation about them. You can use them. They're very good as well. That's the reason why everybody recommends them. But I knew plenty of people who passed on them and just went straight for the Japanese Post system, and that the rates were pretty similar as far as the money exchange went. So
Covered in a lot of organizations.
yeah.
Cell phones?
So I can tackle. Does everybody have questions about cell phones, or do you want me to tackle that on the individual roundtables?
No, do it.
Do it now. All right, cell phones. I did extensive research into this before I went to Japan, so I'm pretty good at this one, and it's also recent enough for you that you should that the information should be valid still. If you have a GSM phone, so T-Mobile, AT&T, they will work in Japan. You could get a Japanese SIM and put it into the phone. You would obviously have to cancel or hold your current contract, but getting one that way works. If you do not want to go with that option, the phone companies function very similar to how Sprint operates right now, which is 2-year contracts, buy your phone outright, is how they work. You can break the contract on the year date, so if it's your first year and you're leaving, or it's your third year and you're leaving, you can cancel your contract before that second year goes, and you pay a cancellation fee. But as long as you don't go over that half year mark, that half contract mark, it does. You can do it. I did it myself. It wasn't too hard. I just spent an afternoon in the SoftBank stressing the person out, but it works. It's fine. I kept my I actually bought a phone in Japan, bought a really nice one, used it as my camera as I traveled around. So all those photos you saw were me taking cell phone pictures. They turned out really nice. That way I didn't carry an expensive camera around with me that I could lose. So that was my option that I took. Low-cost phones do work as well. So if you have a nice digital phone, you have a really nice phone right now, you don't want to change your carrier or your contract or other things like that, you can buy one of those little mobile hotspots, carry it around with you, and you can use those contracts like Verizon offers with the ones plugging your laptop. You can carry those around and use your American phone if you'd like as well, and then just get a really cheapy flip phone in Japan, basically kind of like Boost Mobile type of thing, and pay minimal prices for a Japanese phone just to have one just in case. Last option for you, depending on your carrier, Sprint does it, and I believe T-Mobile does as well. They charge you $5 extra per month on your current contract, and your American phone will work internationally in Japan. And the data rates are the exact same, and your call rates are pretty much the same too internationally. So that is a third option as well. Like I said, I used a Japanese phone. I barely, if ever, called somebody on that phone. Everybody uses Line in Japan as far as Japanese people go, which is an IM service, very much akin to Facebook Messenger. Jets a lot of times use Facebook Messenger. So you're using data, not necessarily talk. More questions on cell phone, I'll specify as we go.
In regards to data, what are the data plans like? Do you have unlimited ones? What's the price range for that?
So data plans in Japan are fairly comparable to out here. They do kind of tier up in nature. I was on the lowest end data plan, even traveling around Japan extensively, using GPS, constantly translating pictures that I'm taking of, like using Google Translate and swiping and figuring out signs. Even with all that, I was barely hitting 5 gigs a month. So unless you are live streaming yourself as you walk around Japan, or you're watching Netflix constantly on your phone, like Netflix or Hulu or something, you will not hit high data caps. So go for the lower end plans. You can always tier up.
I wanted to add something about phones real quick, which is, and correct me if this has changed since I came back, but it used to be that the Japanese companies were not required to unlock your phone. So a lot of people would like buy an iPhone, come back, and they're like, oh, I'm just going to switch out the SIM.
I have your answer for that.
Okay, go
Any phone manufactured after May 2015 is required to be unlocked by a Japanese company. It costs $30.
That's so much better. Okay.
I really did think about it, though. They tried to screw me over when I left, but I figured out how to unlock it.
Oh yeah, they'll try it. Well, it depends. It depends. If you walk in real nice, you figure out like the Japanese equivalent of like unlocking the phone, print it off, and be like, I want to do this. Let's do this. Let's cancel my contract. I'm leaving the country. They'll figure it out for you. They just need to know what it is you want them to do. I worked with SoftBank. I don't know about Domoco, but I would imagine. Oh, sorry, Docomo. Thank you. I was like, that didn't sound right. I didn't work with AU or Docomo, so I don't know how they handle. But salesmen are salesmen. If you don't like yours, just go to a different city's SoftBank or the different one in your city, and try and work with them instead.
How much did you want to pay for your plan?
Oh, it was very comparable to the U.S. rate. So it was something like $70 to $100 a month, somewhere in that range. I can't remember what the conversion rate, what it was. And that is me doing the mental math, like breaking down my cost for the phone over the 2 years, even though, like I said, you pay for your phone outright. So if you're going to buy a nice phone in Japan, be ready to drop $800 to $1,000, just like you would here for a new iPhone. They don't do subsidized plans.
Yeah, I did. You sort of answered already about unlocked phone. So I hear a lot on the forums that to bring an unlocked phone and go to like a local electronics store and get a SIM card. Is that
sort of? Yes, you can do that. Like I said, if you have a GSM phone, you need to make sure your phone is compatible with the Japanese bands and networks. If it is, then yes, you can bring an unlocked phone. Make sure it's a relatively new phone, not something from like 7-8 years ago. That will really trip them up and possibly not work with the SIMs. But if you have a new phone and it's unlocked, you can bring it, put in the SIM. Go to one of the larger carriers. Probably there. Like I said, there are these small like month-to-month carriers, like there are out here. I have heard they're iffy, both as in regards to coverage as well as in regards to communicating with you when like. My bill was twice as much as it should have been. Why was that? I can't get a hold of anyone. All the systems are automated. I can't physically talk to anyone, even in Japanese, to figure this out. My JTE is incredibly frustrated and baffled too, because even by Japanese standards, this is really messy. Use one of the big 3 carriers. Bring your SIM. If you want to put in the SIM, try it. If for some reason it doesn't work, then just be prepared to either do a mobile hotspot or a flip phone. Who else had questions, or did that answer those in regards to
I think just some background information as well. AU is generally regarded as having the best coverage around the country. So if you're in like a pretty rural area, check them first. They'll generally do a better job. SoftBank's kind of the next best one. Docomo's kind of the cheap option, which works really well if you're in the city. SoftBank is kind of known for playing a little bit dirty with their contracts, especially for people who are not Japanese. They have all sorts of special clauses and things that somebody might say in a store to sell you a phone that then is not actually in writing. That happened to me. So I'm not impressed. I know several people that happened to, so be a little careful with SoftBank, but they can be sort of that medium option between like price and just an easy contract.
that is a fair point with SoftBank. Is there are all these little tertiary things they like to add on, much like carriers out here being like, oh, you can stream anime on your phone, and like here's like this free game package so you can play online without having to pay monthly subscriptions. They'll offer you all these things that then, much like a Comcast cable bill or something, kick in after 6 months. You do need to just be like, no to all that. It's not hard to figure out while you're doing it. Like I said, chances are you'll have an advisor or somebody from the board or your JT or somebody there with you. Just clarify that, like, most basic plan, please, no fancy stuff. And then after you get the phone, ask them, hand them the phone back, be like, turn off all the fancy stuff right now. I don't want to be billed for them later.
I was just curious, the JET handbook mentions that there's some voltage difference between the west and eastern.
It's 10 volts, it doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
The big thing is they don't have grounding cables, so all of their prongs are just 2-prong. So if you have a 3-prong computer, buy the little $1 thing from Home Depot that turns it into a 2-prong, and you're fine.
So I've heard it takes a long time to get internet set up in your apartment. So is it a good idea to buy a temporary hotspot with you?
So, actually, I have a couple answers for you in that regard. So, internet services, yes, they are intense out there, and they are just as frustrating as Comcast or CenturyLink or Time Warner. They do take a while. You do have to physically be at your house for them to show up and install stuff. It takes a while. It's really complicated. Best 2 options. One, you might be able to just mobile hotspot it and never actually pay for internet, like grounded internet contracts. They'll try and tack on television, other stuff like that. So it might be less expensive for you just to do a mobile hotspot the entire time you're out there. That is an option, and then depending on what cell phone you got, you might not have to double up on paying for things. You could have your cell phone, you have your US cell phone, your cheapy Japanese phone, your wireless hotspot, and that's it. And the only things you're paying for are your hotspot and your throwaway phone. If you do want to do it, there is a website called BB Apply. There's
The letter B.
BB, yes, letter B, apply. I think it's .net. Yeah, it's .net. There is a guy who has done all of this legwork for you. You type in your address. He will tell you he will email you back with a list of all of your internet options and their price tiers and what services are available to you in your area. And he will send you the links to be able to call and set all of that up and apply to it. So BB Apply, which you might hear more about later during orientation, or a senpai will give it to you, somebody will give it to you. That's a good option if you do want grounded, hardline internet. One thing I did is I actually had my predecessor roll their contract over to me. It gets a little funky to do. You'll need to be able to be in communication with them prior to arriving to Japan. Basically, the predecessor is going to, probably with the JTE, contact the cable service provider, tell them that they're changing the name on the contract, but they want to continue the contract at the same location, at the same house and everything. It will roll over to you, and then you'll be set to go. The way you pay your internet is you actually get it in the mail, and then you carry this little card to a little convenience store. You hand them the card and you pay in cash for your monthly internet bill. So all that changes on their end is who it's addressed to. It's weird to do, but it is possible.
Hold on.
Taylor had something to
last
input.
question and then we'll go over to the next
Yeah.
thing.
Just to add to that, I do that as well. Like I had the rollover thing. I think it went back like 3 or 4 ALTs. It was still that person's name. We're still using his account. Another option, which I ended up doing towards the end, was take a look at what the schools provide you in terms of internet options, because the way the security network worked at my schools, because I moved around a lot, I was not provided with a computer sometimes, so I had to bring my own, and then they wouldn't let me connect to their internet service. They don't have Wi-Fi, so because of security reasons, I So the mobile hotspot might actually work better for your situation, and you can bypass having a home service altogether. But they are kind of capped, and they run slow if you use them too much. There's like unlimited options for data in those portable.
I'm just going to ask about the data options within the internet. Is it like the US where you
It
can
is
have an unlimited plan, or is it by like the gig?
It's exactly like it is here. There's by gig and then there's unlimited plans. So they tier, the cell phone carriers tier up I think it's 5 gigs, 10 gigs, 20 gigs, unlimited, I think is what the plans are. Something like that. I don't know, these things change all the time, but yeah, like I said, I took the lowest end plan, and even constantly using Google Maps and navigation, all that other stuff, I barely hit 5 gigs ever.
Okay, so, and when you get there, there will be more people to help you with the internet for sure. And Charles is our god of internet services. We can probably do a cell phone session next year. So a couple of things. Roundtables are coming up next, so I will be doing some Army Command stuff with everybody in a moment. But before that, one thing. For those who kind of came in a little bit later, there is this sign-up form. The consulate cannot technically share your information with us. So if you haven't had a chance to fill this out, please do, because this is the only way we can keep in touch with you. So when you get near that Perry dip in the culture shock and you get the recontacting thing, we will be there to help you out with it. Also know that probably the initial email will get sent to your junk mail folder, because we use MailChimp, which is a mail service. So just be aware that it might disappear into your junk folder. The other thing is that I have to apologize for this, but the last thing, the happy hour, is actually starting at 3:30.
We have function 3.
What is it?
3.
Oh, good. Okay, it will start at 3. So we will be able to casually walk down there. If you want to walk with some of us, great. If you want to drive down there, that's also fine. But there will be quite, how many alumni are coming to that?
Looks like about 20. Right now.
So they may be outnumbering you, because I know not everybody here is going to that. So for the roundtables, I think we're going to keep people pretty close to the deal. There's 5 of us. So Keone, can you stand up? Whitney, Taylor, Charles, Van, and myself. These are going to be your people. And actually, sorry, to our folks online, I know you can hear me. Thank you so much for joining, and we apologize for the technical stuff. At this point, we can't really live stream anymore, but we will be. If you can follow us on Facebook, we'd be very happy to answer any extra questions. And there's a ton of other JET Facebook stuff out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sort of move a few of you, but I'm going to just send our alumni to different spots. And can you move to the next slide from the main slideshow?
Yes.
So we each kind of have different specialties that we can speak to. Obviously, the 4 main presenters were white men. Keone and Whitney, who are also JET alumni, are here to sort of give you more perspectives. And thank you so much, Whitney, for all of that before, since I don't wear a lot of makeup here today. Or pantyhose. But these